We're starting on top of Yud Aleph Amid Aleph on the third line. We're continuing this whole series of Amoraim, giving how they would introduce Megillah Esther. When they would start giving their shir, what pasuk would they say? So we're starting from the third line, Rabbi Chanina Bar Papa. So third line, top of Yud Aleph Amid Aleph. So Rabbi Chanina Bar Papa pasach la pischa lai parshas hamehacha. So he quoted the following pasuk: Hirkavta enosh l'roshenu, banu va'esh uvamayim. That you have mounted, you have placed a man on top of our heads. Banu, and we have come through fire and water. Ba'esh b'mei Nebuchadnezzar harasha. Ba'esh is referring to the times of Nebuchadnezzar harasha. Rashi tells us shehi tilanu l'soch hakivsha, and he threw Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah into the furnace of fire. The furnace. Ubemayim, who's that referring to? Bimei Paro. It's referring to Paro. The fact that he threw the babies into the water. Vatotzienu larvaya. And the conclusion of the pasuk is, they took us out, with abundance. Bimei Haman. That's referring to Haman. Rabbi Yochanan pasach la pescha la parsha mehacha. He quoted this pasuk. Zachar chasto v'emunaso leveis Yisrael. So Hashem remembered the kindness they showed towards Bnei Israel. Ra'u chol afsei aretz eis Yeshuas Elokeinu. And all of the inhabitants of the world saw the salvation of God. When was the time that everybody, all the nations, witnessed the salvation that God gave the Jewish people? Bimei Mordechai ve'Esther. In the days of Mordechai and Esther, Rashi just tells us, Shehadavar nigla l'chol ha'umos. Why was this specifically revealed to all the nations? Shehalchu igros b'chol ha'olam. Because the letters that were passed out, first the letters said that they could kill the Jews, and letters said that the Jews can defend themselves, so everybody knew what was going on. Reish Lakish pasach la pescha la parsha mehacha. What is the following pasuk? Ari nohem v'dov shokek, that a lion, roaring lion, and a growling bear, moshel rasha al amdal, are similar to an evil ruler on a poor nation. So Ari Nohem, who's the roaring lion referring to? Zen Nebuchadnezzar harasha. That refers to Nebuchadnezzar dichsiv bei ale Aryai misubcho. The pasuk referring to Nebuchadnezzar refers to him as a lion, that the lion should rise up from the thicket. Dov shokek ze Achashverosh. Who's the growling bear? Achashverosh dichsiv bei. Because it says, the pasuk says in Daniel, Va'aru cheva acharei tinyana damya ledov, that afterwards he witnessed something which looked like a bear. V'tani Rav Yosef, who is this referring to in this vision of Daniel? Elu Parsim, these are the Persians. And Achashverosh again is really the head of the Persian kingdom. She'ochlim v'shosin kedov. So why are the Persians considered like bears? Because they eat and drink like bears. Mesur balim bebasar. Rashi tells us they're full of flesh. Kedov, like a bear. Megadlin se'ar kedov. They're hairy like a bear. Ve'en lahem menucha kedov, and they don't have any sort of rest like a bear. Moshel Rasha, the continuation of the pasuk, an evil ruler, Zeh Haman. That refers to Haman al Amdal, on a poor nation, Elu Yisrael. That refers to Jewish people, Shem Dalim mina mitzvos, that they were poor, derived of mitzvos, didn't act appropriately, and therefore Haman ruled over them. Rabbi Elazar pasach la pescha la parshas hamehacha. He quoted the following pasuk: Be'atzaltayim yimach hamikareh, that through your laziness the roof leaks. Uvishiflus yadayim yidlof habayis, and due to your lazy hands the house will collapse. So bishvil atzlus shahayalahem liyisrael shelo asku b'Torah, due to the laziness of the Jewish people that they weren't learning Torah. Na'aseh sono shel Kadosh Baruch Hu mach, the enemy of Kadosh Baruch Hu for the Jewish people became mach, right, from the word batzaltayim yimach. So through their laziness they became mach. What does mach mean? Ve'ein mach ela ani, and mach means poor. Shene'emar v'im machu me'er kecha. Pasuk here describes if somebody offers erchin, somebody offers, I want to donate, somebody wants to donate their own value to the Beis HaMikdash, so there are different prices depending on your age and your gender. And the pasuk here says, "V'imachu merkecha." If you're too poor to pay the value of what you're actually worth, etc. So mach means poor. Ve'in mikareh el HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That refers to God. Shneimar hamikareh v'mayim al yosav. That God makes, the upper realms. He makes the roof out of water. So referring to God, and therefore from the pasuk "Batam mimach hamikareh" again means that because we were lazy, we became poor in the eyes of God. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Pasach la Pischa laha Parshas HaMehacha. He quoted the following pasuk: Shir Hamalos Lulei Hashem Shahayalanu Yomar Na Yisrael. Had Hashem not been with us, and the Jewish people should say so. Lulei Hashem Shahayalanu. If God had not been with us, Bekum Aleinu Adam. When a man rose up against us. So Adam v'lo Melech. It refers to a man and not a king. Generally, the Jewish people fought against other kings, other kingdoms. Here, in the story of Megillah, they don't fight another king, they fight another man, because Haman was just the minister, was not a king of any nation. Rava pasach la pischa laha parshas hamehacha. He quoted the following pasuk: Birvos tzadikim yismacha'am uvimshol rasha yenacham. When they're ruled by righteous people, yismacha'am, they will be happy. Uvimshol rasha, when they're ruled by a wicked person, ye'enacham, they will groan. Birvos tzadikim yismacha'am ze Mordechai ve'Esther. So when a righteous person will rule over you, you'll be happy. That refers to Mordechai and Esther. Tichsiv at the end of the Megillah, v'ha'ir Shushan sahalav v'samecha. That the kingdom, that the city of Shushan was all excited and happy. If an evil ruler, if you have an evil ruler, then you will be upset, you will groan. First, Haman dichsiv v'ha'ir Shushan navocha. After the proclamation, they want to kill everybody. That the city of Shushan was confused, bewildered, in a state really of mourning. Okay, Ramas now Amar Mehacha. He goes to the next pasuk. Kimi goy gadol asher lo elokim krovim elav. Who is such a nation like the Jewish people that has God so close to them? Referring to again all the miracles that took place on Purim and how Hashem saved us. Rav Ashi Amar Mehacha. Rav Ashi quotes another pasuk. Oh Hanisa Elokim. As God performs miracles and etc. in the pasuk. So that's a fitting pasuk for here. So now it's just going to go. We're going to go back to darshaning out the first pasuk, and then we're going to go back to opening drasha lines. So Vayhi b'mei Achashverosh. So Amarav Vai Vahi. Vai is almost like woe to us, and he is mourning. Right? Hada dichsiv, and that's what's written. V'hisma kartem sham leoivecha la'abadim lish belish fachos. That you will be sold there as servants and as maidservants. That's referring to the time period of Achashverosh. So Shmuel quoted the following pasuk, for his introduction. Lo me'astim v'lo ge'altim l'chalosam, referring to the first tochacha in the Torah. Hashem says that lo ma'us is disgusting, so you will not be disgusting to me. V'lo ge'altim, I will not reject you l'chalosam, to destroy you. Lo me'astim, when were you not revolting to me? Bimei Yevanim, in the days of Yevanim, of the Greeks. V'lo ge'altim, I didn't reject you. Bimei Nebuchadnezzar. L'chalosam, to destroy you. Bimei Haman. And then the pasuk continues, Lahafer brisi itam, to destroy, to eradicate the covenant I have with them. Bimei Parsim, in the days of the Persians. Ki ani Hashem Elokehem, bimei Gog uMagog, right? Because I am Hashem their God, referring to the days of Mashiach, the war of Gog and Magog. B'masnisa Tana, and the Brisa has a similar, I guess it's similar to the statement of Shmuel with a few add-ons. Lo me'astim, you weren't revolting to me. B'mei kasdim. Why? Shehemarati lahem, because who did I give to you? Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah. They were the leaders, helped you through that time. V'lo ge'altim, I didn't reject you. B'mei Yevanim, referring to the days of the Greeks. Shehemarti lahem Shimon HaTzadik v'Chashmonai uvanav uMatitya Kohen Gadol. And the ones who got you through that period were Shimon HaTzadik and the Chashmonai. L'chalosam b'mei Haman shemarti la Mordechai ve'Esther, because I had Mordechai and Esther save the Jewish people. Le'afer brisi tam b'mei Parsim shemarti lahem shalbeis Rabbi b'chachmei doros. That's referring to the Chachamim who have saved the Jewish people in that generation. Ki ani Hashem Elokehem le'asid lavo. That refers to the time in the future days, times of Mashiach. She'en kol umma v'lashon yichola lishlop b'hem. When no other nation will be able to rule over the Jewish people. Okay, another drasha opening. Rabbi Levi Amar Mehachai Bimlo Sorishu Es Yoshvei Haaretz. It's a pasuk from this week's parsha, Parshas Maseh. Says if you don't conquer all of the nations in the land of Israel, then they're going to end up being a bad influence on you. And here Rashi just quotes the story with Shaul. That Shaul was commanded to kill Amalek, and he destroyed many of them, but did not finish the job. He let the woman, the children, and Agag, the king, live on, and Amalek survived. And that's why we quote that pasuk here, referring to Haman, because Haman again is a descendant of Amalek who could have been wiped out, but we didn't wipe them out, and then they were bad influence, and they were really bad for us. Rivke Amar Mehacha quotes again a pasuk from our from this week's parsha. V'hayaka asher tamisi la'asos lahem, as I wanted to do to them, referring to God's enemies, the Jewish people's enemies, esel lachem, I will end up doing to you, right? And that's what Rashi says, Af elu kimat kalu, right? In the story of Purim, the Jewish people were almost destroyed. So what he wanted to do to our enemies, he almost did to us. Okay, now we're going to go back into darshaning out the psukim in the Megillah. Achashverosh. So Amar Rab Achiv Shel Rosh, that Achashverosh was the brother of Rosh, who Ben Gilo Shel Rosh. So what Rashi tells us, Achiv Shel Rosh meaning Kolomar Domelo, he is similar to Rosh. Ben Gilo means Ben Mazalo, from the same zodiac sign, whatever there was. Shnehem Das Achas Hayalahen, they thought similarly. So Achiv Shel Rosh, who is this Rosh referring to? Achiv Shel Nebuchadnezzar, referring to that Achashverosh was similar to Nebuchadnezzar Harasha. Shenikra Rosh. Shenemar, the pasuk in Daniel, Antu Reisha Didahava, your head is full of gold, referring to Nebuchadnezzar. And Ben Gilo Shel Rosh, and he thought like like Nebuchadnezzar. Hu Harag, Nebuchadnezzar killed. Hu Bikish Laharog, Haman Achashverosh attempted to kill. Hu Hechriv, Nebuchadnezzar destroyed the Beis HaMikdash. Hu Bikesh Lahachriv, he also attempted to destroy the Beis HaMikdash. What's that referring to? Rashi tells us, Yesod says Zerubbabel beVeis HaMikdash. Right in the times when they started rebuilding the second Beis HaMikdash, Zerubbabel came and he built a foundation for the Beis HaMikdash in the days of Koresh, who was before Achashverosh. And then if you go back to the Gemara, Shenemar, how do we know Achashverosh tried to destroy that foundation? So in the beginning of his kingdom, Katvu Sitna al Yoshve Yehuda Yerushalayim. They wrote an accusation about the inhabitants of Yehuda and Yerushalayim, trying to put them in bad light in front of the king's eyes in order that to be able to destroy the Beis HaMikdash. Shmuel offers another interpretation or drasha on Achashverosh. Shmuel Amar Shehushcharu, Ken Achashverosh Shehushcharu means he blackened. Pneim Shel Yisrael Bi'amav Keshulei Kedera. He made the Jewish people's faces black like the bottom of a pot, which is all burned. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, the name reminds us, Kol Shezochro, anybody who remembers Achashverosh, Amar Ach L'Rosho. Rashi says Ach means oy, woe to his head. Achashverosh, he was so bad, certainly not going to think highly of him. Rabbi Chanina Amar Shakol Nasu Rashin Bi'amav. Again, the Rosh at the end refers to that everybody became poor in his days. Shneamar Vayasim Hamelech Achashverosh Mas, that Achashverosh taxed the. Sorry.
Tax.
Yeah, he taxed. Yeah, he taxed the all the nations. Okay, then the next pasuk, the next few words, Hu Achashverosh. So what do you mean, who he is Achashverosh? Hu birisho mitchilaso v'ad sofo. He was evil his whole life, from the beginning of his life to his end. Hu Esav. Now we're going to bring other psukim which also have the word hu. So Hu Esav, Hu birisho mitchilaso v'ad sofo. Esav was evil his whole life. Hu dasan va'aviran, hein berishan mitchilasan v'yad sofan, hu hamelech achaz, hu berishon mitchilaso v'yad sofo. So those are all the evil ones who were evil their whole lives, and now we go to the righteous ones. Avram, hu Avraham, hu betzidko mitchilaso v'yad sofo. He was righteous his whole life. Hu Aharon, u Moshe, hein betzidkan mitchilasan v'yad sofan. They were righteous their whole lives. David hu akatan. That David, we're saying here, he was the youngest of his brothers, meaning hu bekat nuso mitchilaso v'yad sofo. He was humble his whole life. Kishem shebekat nuso hiktin atzmo eitzel mishegadol mimenu b'Torah. The same way when he was young, he was humble. He again made himself small in front of somebody who was greater than him in Torah learning. Kach. B'malchuso, so too when he was king, hiktin atzmo eitza misha gadol mimenu b'chochma. So too he was humble in front of somebody who had more wisdom than him. The second story, I think, is referring to Achitofel. Achitofel taught him two things. Mishnah in Pirkei Avos says that even though he only taught him two things, he called him his Rabbi. He still considered him to be his teacher. He made himself humble in these situations. Hamolech, so that he ruled Mehodu Vakush Hamolech. So Amarav Shemalach Me'atzmo, right? He became king himself. Achashverosh did not descend from the royal family. It was really Vashti who was the granddaughter. I think we said that yesterday, right? She was the granddaughter of Nebuchadnezzar. Achashverosh married the queen and then ended up becoming ruler. So Malach Me'atzmo said, but he really became king himself. So Armilei L'Shvach, Armilei L'Gnai. Some say this is praise for him, and some say this is degrading, disgraceful. Amrila L'Shvach, why could it be praiseworthy? There's nobody who was worthy to be king like him, and therefore he was able to take over the kingdom. Some say this is actually shows his disgrace. He wasn't actually fit to be king. Offered a nice bribe, had a lot of money, and then was able to take over the kingdom. So he ruled from Hodu until Kush. Ravu Shmuel. Char Amar Hodu Besofa Olam, Vikush Besofa Olam. One of them think that Hodu's on one side of the world and Kush on the other side. V'char Amar Hodu Vikush Gabe Hadadi. And one think that no, those two cities are actually right next to each other. Gabe Hadadi Havu Chaimi Kishem Shemalach Al Hodu Vikush. And the same way he ruled over these two cities next to each other. Kach Malach misofa olam viad sofo. So too he ruled from one side to the other. This morning I suggested maybe the machlokes is whether the world was flat or round. Right? If it's flat, it has to be the two ends. I say that more in somewhat of a joke, but I don't know. And then the similar story, Kayotze b'davar ata omer, similar when it describes Shlomo's reign, Kihu rodeh b'chol ever hanahar, he ruled mitifsach v'ad Aza, Ravu Shmuel, Chal amar tifsach b'sof ha'olam, and Aza b'sof ha'olam, referring to two ends of the world, you controlled everything in between. V'chal amar tifsach v'aza b'hadi hadadi havu kaime, they were next to each other, Keshem shemalach al tifsach v'al Aza, in the same way he ruled over those two cities, areas, provinces, Kach malach al kol ha'olam kulo, he ruled over the whole world. So we're told about Achashverosh, the next few words, Sheva ve'ashrim u'meya medina. Amar of Chista b'tchila malach al Sheva. Initially he only had 7 provinces. V'levasof malach al esrim. Then he was given another 20. V'levasof malach al meya, and then he was given another 100, 127. So we say El Me'ata. If you want to make the drasha based on that format, Ushnei chaye Amram Sheva u'shloshim u'ma'as shana. We are told that Amram, who's Moshe's father, lived for 137 years. My drasha is what drasha are you going to make out of the 137? Shiny hacha dekra yiserehu. No, our case is different because it's superfluous. Michtik siv Hodu v'Kush. Once we're told that he ruled over the whole world from Hodu until Kush. Sheva v'yashrim u'meya medina lamali. Why need to tell me how many provinces? Who cares? He ruled over the whole world. Shmamina lidrasha, to make the following drasha. Tan Rabban. The rabbis taught Shlosha Malchu Bekipa. There are 3 kings who ruled over the entire world. Ve'elu Hein, who are this referring to? Achav ve'Achashverosh ve'Nebuchadnezzar. These 3 men, Achav, the king of the Jewish people, Achashverosh, and Nebuchadnezzar. Achav Tichsiv, how do we know? Chai Hashem Elokecha. The story, Achav was searching for Eliyahu. He was mad at him. There was a terrible drought that Eliyahu decreed on the people. Achav was looking for him. And he sent servants all over. And I think this statement is being made by Ovadia, who's one of Achav's servants, when he encounters Eliyahu. He says, Chai Hashem Elokecha imish goy mamlacha asher lo shalach adoni sham levakshecha. Right? I promise that there's no nation and kingdom that Achav did not send the messengers to look for you. And then the continuation of the pasuk says that he made everybody swear that they didn't see that the Eliyahu was nowhere to be found. And if he didn't rule over all these different countries and kingdoms, how could he have made everybody swear that Eliyahu was not around? If he only controlled half the world, then he could have been in the other half. Then it would be meaningless. He ruled over the world. It says if there's a kingdom, a nation, right, there won't be any nation or kingdom that won't put their self under the yoke, under the rule of Bavel. So he controlled everybody. We mentioned, Tosfos here says that we don't mention Alexander the Great because he's not mentioned in Tanakh. Now we say Vesuleka, that's it. Only 3 people ever controlled the whole world, nobody else. V'ha'ika Shlomo, but we know Shlomo ruled over the world. So Lo Salik Malchuse. Rashi says Lo Hishli Malchuso, he didn't complete his reign. Sheharei Nitrad, that he had issues, he had to step down from kingdom, from the being king. So Hanichel Manda Amar, it's a Gemara in Gittin. Hanichel Manda Amar Melech Behedjod. That makes sense, according to the opinion that he started off his life as a king, but at the end of his life he was a regular man, so he didn't complete his reign, so therefore we're not going to include him on our list. Elo Manda Amar Melech Behedjod Umelech, that he became king once again at the end of his life. Ma'ika Lemeimar. What can you say? Shlomo Milsach Risi Have. No, we're saying Shlomo's almost dealing on a different realm. Why? Because Shlomo was somebody who not only ruled the entire, all the lower realms, this world, he ruled all the Elyonim, all the demons, the Malachim, everybody in the upper realms as well. Shneimar Vayeshev Shlomo al Kisei Hashem, that Shlomo sat on the chair of God. Ve'hava Sancheriv. How about Sancheriv, the king of Assyria? Tichsiv, because he said, Mi b'chol Elohei haratzos ha'ela, are there any gods of these other nations in the world, Asher hitzilu es artzam yadi, who was able to save their kingdom from me? Nobody was able to do that. I've conquered everything. So we answer, he didn't control the whole world. Ha'ika Yerushalayim, he didn't defeat the Jewish people, he didn't control Yerushalayim. Ha'ika Yerushalayim delo kapsha. The Ha'ika Daryavesh, how about the Persian king Daryavesh? Tichsiv Daryavesh Malka Kasav, that Daryavesh wrote, L'chol Amamya, to all the nations, Umaya Velishna, all the nations and mother tongues of the world, Dairin Bechol Ara, who are living in his land, Shlom Chon Yaske, right, peace unto you. So he wrote to all the nations of the world. So we say Ha'ika Sheva Dolo Malach Alayhu. He actually had 7 provinces that he did not rule over. Tichsiv, because the pasuk in Daniel tells us Shafar Kadam Daryavesh, that Daryavesh was pleased Vehekim al Malchusa Li'achashtar Panaya Mea Ve'esrin, and he appointed 120 rulers over the provinces in his kingdom. So 120, Achashverosh had 127. So we're saying that Daryavesh didn't control 7 other provinces. The Ha'ika Koresh, but have a Koresh, the Persian king, Dichsiv Koamar Koresh Melech Paras. Koresh stated, Kol Mamlachos Haaretz Nasan Li Hashem. I've been given all the kingdoms of the world. So there too, Hasam Ishtabuchehu Dekamishtabach Benafshe. There he seems to be praising himself. And it's not a reliable statement. He's just saying, God gave me this whole world, look how great I am, almost. But it's not factual, and therefore he didn't necessarily control the whole world. Okay, now on to the next pasuk in the Megillah. Bayamim hahem, in those days, kisheves hamelech, when Achashverosh sat on his throne. Uchsiv, in the next pasuk, basrei bishnas shalosh lemacho, the 3rd year of his kingdom. So Rashi here just tells us when it says kisheves, mashma bitchilas malchuso. So we assume it's the beginning of his reign, and then all of a sudden we're told it's actually the 3rd year of his reign. So what is Amar Rava? My kisheves. What does it mean that when he took his reign? La'achar shenis yashva daito, when his mind was put at ease, when he was put at ease. Why? Amar Belshazzar chashavita ana chashivna velo ta'ina. Belshazzar made a calculation and was mistaken. I'm going to make a calculation. I made a calculation and I was not mistaken. Mahi, what's he referring to? Tichsiv, the pasuk says, Ki lefi melos lebavel shivim shana. If kodeschem, Hashem promises that after 70 years in Bavel, He will remember the Jewish people, bring them back to Eretz Yisrael. Uchsiv lemalot lecharvos Yerushalayim shivim shana, the completing 70 years from the destruction of Yerushalayim. So they knew that there were 70 years between the destruction and when they were returning to Eretz Yisrael. And therefore, what was the calculation Belshazzar, who was the Babylonian king, made? Chashuv arba'in v'chamesh Nebuchadnezzar. Well, there were the 45 years of Nebuchadnezzar's reign. The Esrim utlas the Evel Merodach. There were 23 years of Evel Merodach's reign. The Tarti Didei, 2 years of Belshazzar's reign. Hashivim, that was 70 years. So what did he do to celebrate? 70 years Jewish people weren't taken back. Apik mani de Beit Mikdashai, took out the utensils from the Beis HaMikdash, v'ishtamish behu, and he started using them. Okay, now we're going to explain how he made this calculation. V'Nebuchadnezzar minalan de arba'in v'chamesh shanin malach. How do we know he was king for 45 years? De Amar Mar, we have a statement. Galu b'sheva, galu b'shmona, galu b'shmona esrei, galu b'chasrei. We said that they were exiled in the 7th year, exiled in the 8th year, exiled in the 18th year, exiled in the 19th year. So what this means, we're going to explain that we're dealing with two different exiles that took place. So Galu b'Sheva. Thank you. So Galu b'Sheva l'kibush Yehoyakim, Galus Yehoyachin. So in the 7 years after Yehoyakim, who was one of the last kings of Yehuda, was captured, Yehoyachin, who was I think the next king, was sent into exile. And this 7 years after Yehoyakim was captured, Shehi Shmone Nebuchadnezzar, that's the 8th year of Nebuchadnezzar's reign. And Galu b'Shmona Esrei l'kibush Yehoyakim Galu Tzikiyahu, and when it says they were exiled in the 18th year, that's referring to 18 years after Yehoyakim was captured. That's when Tzidkiyahu was sent into exile, and when Tzidkiyahu was sent to exile, that's at the time of the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. Shehi Chasrei Nebuchadnezzar, which is the 19th year of Nebuchadnezzar's reign. How do we know this? Damar Mar Shana Rishona Kibesh Ninveh. We know in Nebuchadnezzar's first year of his reign, he captured the city of Ninveh. Ushniya Kibesh Yehoyakim, and then in the 2nd year Yehoyakim. So therefore, if it's been 7 years from the Yehoyakim was captured, that means 8 years to Nebuchadnezzar's reign. He reigned for 1 year longer. Uchsiv. And then, fine, that tells us one part of what we need to know. And then we're told at the end of Sefer Yirmiyahu, Vayhi bishloshim b'sheva shana legalus Yehoyachin, in the 37th year of Yehoyachin's exile. So Yehoyachim melech Yehuda, b'shnei masar chodesh b'esrim v'chamisha lechodesh, nasa Evel Merodach melech Bavel b'shnas malchuso es rosh Yehoyachin melech Yehuda. That's when Evel Merodach became king, and he took Yehoyachin out of jail, Vayotze oso mi beis hakela, and he removed him from prison. So therefore, what do we know? What year was Yehoyachin sent into Galus? In the 8th year of Nebuchadnezzar's reign. So that's Tamni, 8. V'tzlatin b'sheva, we know that in the 37th year of Yehoyachin's exile, that's when Evel Merodach became king, meaning that's when Nebuchadnezzar ended his reign. So 8 plus 37, Hare Arba'in B'chamesh. That gets us 45 years. Nebuchadnezzar. The Esrim plus the Evel Merodach Gemara. We have a tradition that Evel Merodach was king for 23 years. The Tarti Didei, 2 years of Belshazzar. Hashivin, that's 70 years. Amar, Hashta Vadai Tulo Mefarki. Certainly the Jewish people aren't going to be saved now. Apik Mani de Beit Mikdashai, took out the utensils of Beis HaMikdash, V'ishtamish Behu, and he used them. So Hainu de Kamar le Daniel, this is what Daniel said to him, Ve'almari Shemaya Hisromamta, you elevated yourself above God, Ulemane di Beise Hetev Kadamach, and you took out the utensils from his house. What happened? Uchsiv Be Belelie Katel Belshazzar Malka Kastai. That night he was killed, right, for doing such a terrible thing. So obviously Belshazzar was wrong. Right, and then we're told Daryavesh Mada'ad, Daryavesh took over the kingdom. Kiba Malchuso Kvar Shanin Shasin Tartin. He took over the kingdom when he was 62. So now back to Achashverosh. So he says, Amar Ihu Mititai. He made this mistake. Ana Chashivna Velota'ina. I'm going to make a calculation, and I'm not going to make a mistake. Miksiv Lamalchus Babel. We're not counting 70 years from when Babel took over, in Babel's reign. We're not starting our count from when Nebuchadnezzar became king. LeBabel Ksiv. It just says 70 years to Babel. My LeBabel, what's that referring to? Legalus Babel. The exile into Babel, which we're assuming here means when Yehoiachin, this is before the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, when the king Yehoiachin, 11 years before the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, when he went into exile. So therefore, with this new calculation of Achashverosh, Kama B'tziran, how many years was he missing? Tamni, 8 years. So therefore Achashverosh counted 8 years. Chashi v'ayol chilufayhu. So he made up the 8 years. Chada de Belshazzar, 1 year of Belshazzar's reign that he didn't count. V'chamesh de Daryavesh v'Koresh, 5 years of Daryavesh and Koresh. V'tarte didei, 2 years of Achashverosh, that's 8. Therefore, in the 3rd year of his rule, that's when he has his big party in the beginning of the Megillah. Hashivin, that's 70 years. Given the Chazi demalu shivin velo ifrok amar hashda vaday tulam befarki. The Jewish people aren't going to be saved. Apik mani the Beit Mikdasha. He too took out the utensils of Beis Hamikdash v'ishtamesh bahu, and he used them. Basatan, the Satan came down. V'rikid b'neihem, danced among them. V'harag es Vashti, killed Vashti. Now we say, V'ashap your chashav. Okay, he seemed to be right. It was 70 years, Jewish people weren't saved. Why was Achashverosh wrong?
Sorry, the Satan was dancing and that's where Vashti was killed?
Yeah, whatever that means. Maybe the Satan went into Achashverosh's mind. Yeah. Certainly not pshat in the Megillah. Yeah. Although I can't say much of this is. V'ha shapir chashiv. So we say, yeah, his calculation was correct. Why was he wrong? He too made a mistake. They weren't supposed to count 70 years from when Yehoiachin went into exile. They're supposed to count 70 years when the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, which is 11 years later. Sof kama b'tzira. So at the end of the day, how many years are we missing now? Chadesar, 11 years. So Ihu kama malach, how many years was Achashverosh king? Arbesar, 14 years. So he thought in the 3rd year of his rule, it should have been 70. But certainly, so make up 11 years. In the 14th, at the end of his rule, they should have been come back. And in the 14th year, they should have rebuilt the Beis HaMikdash. Allah Maksib, but we know the Pasuk tells us, Beidayin betelas avidas beis Eloha di Yerushalayim, that they had in the time of Achashverosh, they cancelled the building of Yerushalayim. So Rava says, no, here too they made a mistake. Shanim mikutaos havu. There were too many half years. I'm thinking what this means is that sometimes they would double count the years. I think we kind of talked about this in Mesechus Rosh Hashanah, talking about the years of the kings, that if a king, goes 2 months into the year and then a new king starts, they'll count it as 1 year for the previous king, 1 king for the next, 1 year for the next. So I think they could have been putting that into the calculations here, and therefore they needed a bit more time. There was 1 more year. Well, here actually Rashi tells us, so maybe only between them there was a year swallowed up. So I don't know if it's exactly what I just said. And therefore the Beis HaMikdash really was built in the Daryavesh, who was the next king, of Persia. So after the conclusion of Achashverosh, they make up 1 more year, which was Daryavesh, and then the Beis HaMikdash was built. All right, we'll stop here. Have a good day.